Okay, and I'd like to reopen the meeting at 6:36. I do apologise to those people who are just joining us online. We are up to item 3 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes. So far we've opened the meeting with a reconciliation statement, and we didn't have any apologies and leaves of absence, but we do have Councillor Sharp who is joining us via Zoom. So back onto the agenda, we've got the confirmation of minutes, item 3. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 26th of July 2022 be confirmed? Move Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Bedio. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest any council would like to declare tonight? No. Okay, now, councillors, item 5 on the agenda is presentations, and I do believe we have a few tonight. So we might start off, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to express my profound sorrow at the recent passing of Uncle Archie Roach. Uncle Archie was an incredible man of strength, resilience and generosity. His songs spoke to the pain and hurt of generations of Aboriginal Australians, but also to hope of a better future. For those of you who may have been lucky enough to meet Uncle Archie or see him perform, you will know about his incredible gifts as a storyteller. Uncle Archie was a Gunditj Mara and Bundjalung man, born in Mooroopna and taken from his family at the age of 2. He was raised by his adopted family in Moonee Valley, attending school here in Strathmore North. And while he lived for a time here, Uncle Archie reconnected with his true home on his own country later in life. His experiences at the hands of an impressive colonial government shaped his life in countless horrific ways, but Archie's capacity for forgiveness and prodigious skill as a musician and songwriter is what he will be remembered for, and led him to become one of our country's most celebrated artists. While no child should ever have to endure the pain of separation from family and culture, Uncle Archie found gentle ways to turn his painful experience into a lesson for Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people seeking reconciliation through his truth-telling. More recently, Moonee Valley was gifted the experience of concerts with Uncle Archie, who through his songs and storytelling had a strong message of hope and healing for us all. On behalf of Moonee Valley, I want to offer our sincere condolences to Uncle Archie's family and kin who have lost a loved one, to the stolen generations Australians who have lost a brother and uncle and an advocate for their truth, and to the Aboriginal community who collectively mourn Uncle's passing. May he rest easy alongside Ruby and his ancestors.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight I would like to acknowledge the passing of an Australian icon, Judith Durham, AO, our very own Georgie girl, who was born in Essendon on July 3, 1943, and attended Essendon Primary School until 1949. Judith shot to fame when she joined the Seekers and travelled to the UK in 1964. In November 1964, they recorded I'll Never Find Another You, which reached number 1 in Australia and the UK. The group had further top 10 hits with A World of Our Own, Morningtown Ride, Someday, One Day, Georgie Girl, and The Carnival Is Over. On the 12th of March 1967, the Seekers set an official all-time Australian record when more than 200,000 people, nearly 1/10 of the city's entire population at that time, flocked to their performance at the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. In 1968, they were all awarded the nation's top honour as Australians of the Year, 1967. Judith was an outstanding role model and was a trailblazer for future successful Australian artists. Judith was also awarded the 2015 Victorian of the Year Award for outstanding public and community service. Coincidentally, Council, in partnership with the Essendon North Traders, will soon unveil a mural-themed Love Essendon North Village at 118 Glass Street. It celebrates the stories, history and places which make Essendon North a great spot to live, love and work. This gateway 30-metre long mural will have a small tribute to Judith Durham, with it designed with many elements including historical figures, architectural significance, some old stories, businesses and lifestyles to showcase the great community that is Essendon North. Judith Durham, born in Essendon, will be laid to rest befittingly with a state funeral. Rest in peace, Judith. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. And unfortunately this week we've also lost from the Australian community another very talented and quite amazing singer, Olivia Newton-John. Many Australians have been hopelessly devoted to Olivia Newton-John. She was the one that we wanted to be, with her talent and spirit. From when she said, "Look at me, I'm Sandra Dee," we all had to believe that she was magic. And we're very sorry her song has ended, but so very grateful for her advocacy and generosity towards cancer treatments. Moonee Valley has a strong connection with breast cancer advocacy, losing the wonderful Lydia Kozlorich in 2006. And for years after Lydia lost her battle, Moonee Valley supported the breast cancer breakfast. And maybe this annual fundraising event is something we could revisit. As we pay tribute to Olivia, we recognise all those in Moonee Valley whose lives have been affected by breast cancer, the aunts, sisters and mothers we have lost, and those who have been lucky with treatment, like my mother twice survived. The work of Olivia, Lydia and others continues through ongoing efforts to beat cancer and save lives. Thank you, Olivia. You saved the best of you for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Were there any other presentations tonight? No, I'd like to make a couple of presentations. The first one I'd like to mention is that on the 7th of August we had a smoking ceremony in recognition of Wurundjeri Week. Thank you to everyone who came. It was a fantastic turnout on Winter's Day and it was a really special experience for lots of people. So thank you very much to the elders for connecting with council and sharing the cultural stories. Next presentation I would like to make is I would like to pay tribute to Mayor Councillor Tony Driscoll. The North Grampians Shire Council announced that its Mayor, Councillor Tony Driscoll, passed away on Sunday the 31st of July 2022. I was lucky enough to work with Tony on the local government ministerial advisory panel, and his passion for his community was second to none, so he'll be greatly missed by the community and greatly missed by his local community and also the wider community as well. He was a very strong advocate, so it's very sad to see his passing. Donation to the Cancer Council has been made on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council in lieu of flowers as requested by his family. And the last presentation that I'd like to make is a bit more upbeat, which is a thank you for the bench seat donation. So I'd like to thank the members of the Aberfeldy Men's Shed for making and donating a bench seat for the Moonee Ponds Police Station garden. I was lucky enough to go down there last week and it's a really fabulous addition to the Moonee Ponds Police Station. And whilst, we hope we don't have to go to the Moonee Ponds Police Station too often, if you do end up there, there is now a lovely seat to sit on. Right, so no further presentations, councillors? No, so we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is petitions and joint letters. Now we do have one, and our Governance Rule 62.1 states that unless council determines to consider an item of urgent business, no motion may be made on a petition, joint letter, memorial or other like application until the next council meeting after that at which it has been presented. Now I do believe there is one. Councillors who would like to table it? Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd also like to acknowledge two of the petitioners in the gallery here tonight. So Council has received a petition with 29 signatures requesting Council to remove the excessive number of no standing signs erected in Lawgrove Court, Avondale Heights. The petition proposes alternative parking options and requests the community consultation process that Council undertook before erecting the no standing signs be reviewed. It further requests that Council provide alternative parking options and their proposals cost-benefit evaluation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. In accordance to Governance Rule 62.4, I will refer the letter to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, were there any other petitions or joint letters for tonight? No. Item 7 is public question time, and we have received 4 questions this evening. So question 1 is from Ian Woods. I don't believe Ian's in the gallery. No. At the 26th of July 2022 Council meeting, the Chief Executive Officer, Helen Swee, confirmed in relation to the ongoing Strathnava Reserve issue that the consultant's report was operational in nature and has not been presented to the public. Considering that in this digital age and being an operational report, there are no obvious privacy issues, then in the interest of much desired transparency on the Strathnava Reserve issue, what valid reasons are there for not immediately providing public access to this report? And I will pass to the CEO for a response.
Thank you, Ian. Through the Mayor, Council has determined that Strathnava Reserve is a priority for sporting field use and refurbishment will occur in 2022-23. Reproduction of consultants' reports requires consent from the author. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And the second question from Ian Woods is, further to and in relation to my first question, please advise how we can obtain a copy of the consultant's report on the Strathnava Reserve issue.
Thank you, Ian. Through the Mayor, a council officer will be in contact with you to discuss access to the information contained in the consultant's report. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Ian, for your questions. Our next question is from Logan Shield. Thank you, Logan, for your question. Point Advisory's Community Emissions Reduction Analysis, business as usual emissions scenario, was completed prior to a change of federal government and climate change legislation. Would Council consider requesting Point Advisory to update the business as usual emissions scenario, perhaps on a yearly basis, to demonstrate that the task for Council and the community is not quite as large as previously forecast? And I will pass to the CEO for a response.
Thank you, Logan. Through the Mayor, the Community Emissions Reduction Analysis Report was prepared by the consultant Point Advisory in February 2022 to provide guidance on options to help reduce community carbon emissions in Moonee Valley. The report is still quite new and provides clear direction where action is needed and in what sector to reduce community emissions. While the change in federal government may alter the business as usual scenario, updating the data set would yield no further insight with regard to how we might prioritize or sequence actions relating to community emissions. Council is not considering updating the business as usual emissions scenario data as presented in the report. Our aim will continue to be in supporting the community to reduce emissions and using the Community Emissions Reduction Analysis Report to guide areas of focus. As such, the cost of doing more analysis at this time is not seen as a priority. However, future analysis of the business as usual emission scenario may be undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And we have another question from Logan Shield. The urban heat and cooling map on page 97 of MV 2040 uses data for areas susceptible to high temperature exposure from the 18th of March 2010, more than a decade ago now. Will this map be updated, and if so, will Council use state level data, e.g. from DULP, for mapping urban heat? Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Logan. Through the Mayor, Moonee Valley City Council is currently conducting further urban heat island analysis and mapping, with preliminary mapping expected to be complete by the end of 2022. The data will come from a combination of sources, including satellite thermal imagery and on-ground observations, which includes ground thermal data and humidity sensors. Council's new urban heat and cooling maps will be more comprehensive than previously indicated in MV 2040 and will be made public on our website in 2023. Given this new data, MV23 will not be updated as this information was specific at the time of the MV 2040 publication. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And we do have one more question from Apollo Yanni, who I believe is in the gallery. Apollo, did you want me to read your question or you're happy to read it? Apollo's coming up to read the question, pre-submitted question.
Yesterday morning and gave all councillors and the CEO the following documents. Did you get them?
Thanks, Apollo. This is public question time, so you've got a pre-submitted question, which I have here, and we have a response, CEO, is that right?
Was made a declaration of prohibited person, and I'll read you the notice.
Apollo, thank you.
I'll ask the question. If I'm prohibited from using services that this council is supposed to provide to me, why should I pay rates for that time period?
Thanks, Apollo, for your question. I will pass to the CEO for a response.
Thank you, Apollo. The question I have here is raised, why do I pay? So it's slightly different from you just read. We officers will comment later about understanding the bit of that. In response to your question, why do you pay rates? By paying council rates, you ensure the garbage waste is collected and multiple neighborhood services such as local roads, libraries, sports facilities, parks and gardens are maintained.
I pay my rates.
That there is no direct connection between the amount of rates paid by a property and the level of council services received. Many services are provided for the benefit of all community members, but it is up to individuals as to the services they choose to use and access. Thank you.
You don't understand my question.
Thanks, Apollo.
Let me read it to you
Apollo,
again.
It's 6:54, and I'll adjourn the meeting
any council-owned or managed
6:54.
property.
Thank you.
I pay my rates, but for that time period when I'm not allowed to use the facilities, why should I pay the rates?
Apollo, what we can do is we're happy to answer. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question tonight. We are now up to item 8 on the agenda, which is reports from delegates. I don't believe we have any tonight. No? In that case, we'll move to item 9 on the agenda, which is 9.1, response to notices of motion 2021-38, open space plan. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to move a slightly amended motion, if I may.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move that Council resolves to note the progress of open space planning in Moonee Valley, the next steps as set out in their report, including community engagement, and that an updated audit of open space master plans will be circulated to councillors when completed.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson? Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Last week at the smoking ceremony that was held in one of our gardens in Moonee Valley, Wurundjeri elders reminded us of the importance of caring for land, because the land gives us life. Instead, we so often see land as a plot for a concrete palace rather than the provider of food, clean air, shade and peace. Our green spaces are only 13% of our valley, and much of this is riverbank or sporting ovals. We desperately need to take greater care of our green spaces. Now, I'm not sure why our open space plan stalled in 2020, but I'm very glad that it's been dusted off and will be worked through over the next 12 months. This report tonight and this resolution is just the beginning of 12 months of community engagement and work towards a revived, updated open space plan. There are many questions to answer in this process. How can we best optimise green spaces to mitigate urban heat? How can we create more green spaces? How can we ensure our plantings create habitat and restore ecocycles? How can we balance different uses of green spaces? How can we protect green spaces from development? How do we cater for dogs? How can we afford the master plans that we've developed? And how do we prioritise these? Should we call it Green Spaces Plan? Because open sounds empty, whereas these spaces are brimming with life. So how do we make sure we care for the land that gives us life? I look forward to working collaboratively with the community and officers to answer these questions and more over the next 12 months. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. It's no secret we have a very bold vision for MV 2040, and the necessity of open space and to the health and well-being of our community is clearly demonstrated. We need to be able to improve and expand access to open space, and that requires being able to be responsive. We can't magic open space into existence. We have to either purchase it or find it where it exists already. It might be expensive and it will necessarily be opportunistic. We have an open space reserve for the purpose of expanding open space and purchasing new open space, as we saw recently with the purchase of the Strathayed Reserve. But we need to be smart about how we use it. So I think the next steps, as outlined in the report, are really great. We're going to build a robust strategy so that we can make decisions as the opportunities arise, and make sure we're basing those decisions on what will be the highest impact and best value for reaching our vision. We also have a lot of master plans to guide what our open space might eventually look at, but recently sometimes we have a bit of trouble actually implementing a lot of those ideas. So we need to make sure that the open space strategy plans for things that we know will be able to deliver. The opportunities paper that was attached to this report is a really good starting point to go and talk to our community, and I'm looking forward to the next phase of developing the plan or strategy that will ultimately guide us to achieve our vision.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just note I've shared my concerns regarding this report with the CEO, and therefore I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor on this motion? No. Councillor Isa, would you like to close?
It'd be good to know if there are any concerns with the report to share them with colleagues so that we can all understand those concerns. Our MV 2040 strategy sets out various... Sorry?
Were you asking me a question about what I just stated?
No, I didn't ask a point of clarification. I was just making a comment.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Iser, if you can continue, please.
MV 2040 sets out our objectives that include... so I've just lost my notes now, that include action in this area. This report progresses an open space plan that we need to have so that we know how to spend our open space contributions, as Councillor Hodgson mentioned. The attachment to the report is something that was written in 2020 and has, as I say, has been dusted off and brought to us this evening. It's going to undergo 12 months more of engagement and workshopping and refinement so that we can move from the 2020 version to something that's appropriate for 2023. Welcome any concerns from any colleagues. Would love to be contacted about those concerns at any time. Thanks.
Thank you. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Iser, Councillor Byrne. All those against is Councillor Sharp and Councillor Nation. I believe you're in the chamber, so you'll be abstaining from the vote, which is a vote in the negative. That motion is carried. Item 9.2 on the agenda is 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon Shops Heritage Investigation. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And a seconder, Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This report stems from my notice of motion done endorsed a little while ago, and I'm pleased to see that the officer's recommendation is to proceed with with an interim and permanent potential interim and permanent controls on these properties. An expert heritage report has been concluded and found that all 5 properties are early examples of early interwar retail development and would meet the threshold for listing on the existing heritage overlay. The properties satisfied criterion A, local historical significance, and criterion D, architectural representativeness, of the model criteria that have been broadly adopted by heritage jurisdictions across Australia for all new heritage assessment work. So the report, is obviously saying that the independent report is obviously saying that there's definitely a cause for investigation on interim and permanent heritage controls. And whilst we have done so much work in heritage space over the last number of years, particularly probably the last 5-6 years. And it's been great that we've been able to get a lot more precincts investigated and heritage overlay applied. But there are often sometimes, unfortunately, as much as we wouldn't like, just sometimes buildings and properties fall through the cracks, slip through the cracks and aren't included in the potential heritage overlay. So when the plight of these properties, commercial properties, when that plight was highlighted to me a little while ago, I was concerned about, losing what is obviously from the report a very important part of our historical fabric, and hence put up the notice of motion to at least have it investigated. Now, the fact that the investigation has come back saying that these properties meet the criterion, I think over the past number of years when we have attempted to add heritage properties outside of the broader heritage study, it's been difficult. And it is a difficult process. I certainly won't say that it is easy, but In the past, we have tried to apply heritage over properties that may well have not been independently assessed as highly as these have been in the current report that's included in the agenda tonight. So, yes, it is a difficult process, but I'm positive that we will be able to get some a positive outcome from the investigation, considering the high level of intactness and the high level of significance that these buildings are enshrined with. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor, and well done to Councillor Sharp for initially raising this notice of motion and sharing the concerns that had been raised with her by the community. Those concerns have been vindicated by this report and the next steps outlined in the motion. As the heritage citation notes, and as Councillor Sharp has already indicated, these shops look to be over 100 years old, or just nearing that, being built in the 1920s, and are a very intact example of the what they call the striped shop front with the cantilevered veranda, and the intactness of having the shop fronts side by side is something that we don't see a lot of in this city. And while Puckle Street does and Union Road do have similar shop fronts, the intactness of these is obviously something that the report picks up, and therefore has given that recommendation to apply to the Minister. So well done, Councillor Sharp. You were the councillor that led the charge to save the Settlers Cottage, and that is being used by many community groups up there at Woodlands Park. And yeah, well done again for identifying these shops and listening to the community concerns. And as I said, you've well and truly been vindicated, and I would commend this motion to my fellow councillors. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Councillor Isa?
I need to query the title of the motion.
So on the screen at the moment, we have the wrong... There we go. That's better. That's definitely what's been moved as per what's in the agenda. Yes. 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon Shops, Heritage Investigation. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Everyone's been able to see what's on the screen. Let's get a general nod that we know definitely what we're talking about. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm always hesitant to extend heritage overlays, which can be seen in my voting record across my term. Heritage overlays place a significant encumbrance on property owners and occupiers, significantly expanding council's control over the property. It's my opinion that heritage overlays should only be imposed on properties if the potential demolition or modification of a property or area would significantly impact on the cultural significance or character of our city. In this particular instance, however, I consider that the properties at 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road to be of sufficient significance that a heritage overlay should be applied in this instance. Whilst I support the extension of the heritage overlay in this instance, I will reiterate my belief that as a council we have overdone it in the heritage space and have imposed significant restrictions and red tape on far too many occupiers. I consider this situation to be a good implementation of the overlay, where the focus is on specific properties rather than slapping red tape on hundreds of properties and owner-occupiers. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Any other councillor? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just be quick. I completely understand Councillor Bedio's take on that, because yes, heritage overlay is or can be an imposition. There's no doubt about that. In regards to this particular site, for me, the information before us is overwhelmingly points to the fact that they are worthwhile properties to save. They they are pretty much the fabric of North Essendon there. Everyone knows that corner site of Lincoln Road and Mount Alexander Road, that little triangle there, where we've put the seating and gardens. It's the triangle right there with the buildings with your iconic chimneys at the back of them. So they really are standout properties, and I certainly look forward to a positive response from the Minister and moving this and progressing this forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10 on the agenda is notices of motion, and we have 2 notices of motion tonight. So I'll call on Councillor Isa to present her notice of motion titled Alternative Weed Management in Off-Leash Dog Parks and Other Open Spaces.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that noting the work undertaken by Council to date to identify alternative non-glyphosate-based weed management strategies. Council resolves to request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by February 2023 on the feasibility, including costs, of alternative weed management options, in brackets including methods currently being trialled by other councils, such as goat herds, or methods compatible with traditional Aboriginal land management practices in partnership with Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians, close brackets, for off-leash dog parks and other suitable environments in which glyphosate-based products are still used.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And a seconder. Councillor Sypek. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I did practice saying glyphosate at home many times, but a microphone always seems to do its magic. This notice of motion primarily springs from ongoing community concern about Council's use of Roundup or other glyphosate-based products in unfenced off-leash dog parks. Recently, I picked some long weedy grass for my chooks at Travancore Dog Park, and by the time I got home, my hands were streaked with the telltale blue of Roundup, invisible to the eye when I was picking it. My chooks went hungry and I was pretty cranky. There is international disagreement on the harms caused by glyphosate. An agency of the World Health Organization concluded in 2015 that it is probably carcinogenic. But in 2018, the United States EPA concluded that glyphosate is safe and not likely to cause cancer in humans. The EPA is still reviewing data. Yet a jury in California in 2018 awarded a multi-million-dollar verdict against the manufacturer of Roundup for causing cancer. A 2019 study reported a link between long-term high-use exposure and a 41% increase in the risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and international regulators argue about this connection. The company that makes Roundup says it is safe if used according to label directions. Research has also shown that glyphosate can cause problems for pets that touch or eat plants that are still wet with the chemical. Most appear to be short-term complications, and not much research has looked into the long-term problems for pets. So within this context, I share community concerns about the ongoing use of glyphosate for weed management in Moonee Valley, and I have trouble accepting that there aren't other options. Other options probably do come at some cost, and this motion seeks a report to advise us of what those other options might be and what they might cost. The motion specifically identifies dog parks as places for prioritising safer weed management. Council has already stopped using glyphosate products near childcare centres, kindergartens and fenced dog parks. Near waterways or sensitive sites, officers endeavour to use non-herbicide methods of weed control where possible. There are other areas of concern in Moonee Valley, such as near Valley Lake, where birds and other wildlife have formed habitats. Residents have shared beautiful photos of birds nesting on the cliffs. Finding safer ways of managing weeds in sensitive areas such as this is the objective of this notice of motion. As the media have recently picked up, other councils, including City of Melbourne, Maroondah and other metro councils, have started using goats to nibble through weedy groves in difficult-to-access areas. This motion asks for advice on where goats might be an optimal weed destroyer in Moonee Valley. But the motion's about more than this. The intention is to receive a report early next year that provides information including the following. What non-glyphosate weed management options could be used at unfenced off-leash dog parks? What would this cost? What is the effectiveness of these options being tried by other councils, and are there areas suitable for these options in Moonee Valley? What would these options cost? Are there other weed management methods that are compatible with traditional Aboriginal land management practices in partnership with that could be developed in partnership with the Wurundjeri people as traditional custodians? The report can help with understanding what alternative weed management options are possible, where these might be able to be implemented, and what it might cost. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support this motion. In regards to the glyphosate, yes, I also believe it's probably not the best chemical to use, and if we as a council can find alternatives, I'm more than supportive of this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support the motion. We probably do have to acknowledge, I think there's about 99 hectares of off-leash dog areas, so the interesting Roundup is obviously, the use of glyphosate is obviously also a cost decision by council, so we need to ensure that when the report comes back, should this motion get up, that we understand the financial implications as well that this could have, and I know we've received a confidential, I think, councillor update in that regard. I would note, and I think it is the case, that at present this is specifically referring to off-leash dog areas, so don't get concerned about Elf Pierce or the like. I'm of the understanding, probably also, I don't know if we're meant to take vegetation from public areas as well, so probably don't do that either. Look, happy to see what the report comes back with, and then maybe council will be challenged with a tough decision if it does increase the costs greatly, particularly because we're talking about 99 hectares of land, I believe, which is a sizable chunk. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Councillor Isa, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mayor. The motion mentions off-leash dog parks and other suitable environments, so it is broader than just off-leash dog parks. And I think if everyone picked a few weeds when they went to the park, then that would probably solve our weed management problem. I've often been found pulling out weeds in Travancore Park, and whenever I do, people join me and we do a very good effort of weeding our open spaces. So
I will now put that to the vote. Although
I was interrupted, Mayor.
Councillor Isa.
I was just waiting to stop being interrupted. Thanks. Thanks. I think there's absolutely nothing to stop anyone from pulling out a weed in a park. Thank you, Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Councillor Isa and Councillor Nation. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Nation, please. We've got one more item. Let's do this. Councillor Adams, please. Item 10.2 on the agenda. I now call on Councillor Sypek to present notice of motion number 2022-16 titled Climate Change Contribution.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Take notice that at this council meeting on August the 9th, 2022, it is my intention to move that council resolves to request the CEO to bring a report, just a report, to council as soon as practical to investigate the feasibility of creating a community climate emissions reduction reserve, CSIR as I call it. contribution funds on council website where residents can make a $20 contribution, not donation, contribution towards CSIR. The report will outline any legal and financial implications and the requirements for setting up a contribution fund and payment option.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Now, there was a few extra words that were put in there. Can I just confirm that what is on the screen is what you want to have moved?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Yes, so that's moved by Councillor Sypek, and do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have, over the past couple of months, received many emails requesting that council put $20 towards every person in Moonee Valley towards climate change reduction funds, scheme, options, whatever. So, like I said, I received many emails over the past couple of months from many residents requesting that council put $20 for every person in Moonee Valley towards some kind of climate initiative. Now, it is my intention here, this is only a report. This is not, to make it law or make it binding or anything of that nature. This is just a report for the CEO to investigate the practicalities and any legal implications or financial implications of what could we do. And if the report comes back and says there's nothing we can do, well, there's nothing we can do. So this is not any form of legal obligation or any contribution or any donation. This is just simply the officers to investigate the feasibility of a contribution scheme like this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, man. Not a lot to add other than I think it's a great initiative and I'm keen to hear back from this report should this motion be passed.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Any other councillor? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Sypek, for the intent of this. Unfortunately, I won't be able to support the motion. Whilst I appreciate the intent of trying to focus on how council can be involved in assisting reduce community emissions, it takes a step in a direction I'm not comfortable with, which is seeking additional contributions from our residents who do pay rates, and we are obligated to make decisions about how that rates money is spent. A donation scheme, contribution scheme of this nature is, I think, outside of what local government stands for. I don't think that we have parameters around how we should collect money from our residents, and I feel more comfortable operating within those parameters. I would suggest that if residents did want to make additional contributions above and beyond their rates, perhaps that's something that they can investigate with local community groups about how they might reduce their emissions through any additional disposable income they might have. For those reasons, I can't support the motion. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I really understand where Councillor Sypek's coming from with his motion, and I really appreciate putting it forward for discussion. And I've had some conversations with you about it, and thanks for discussing your intent of the motion with me. I'm just not sure I quite agree on this particular approach. We do need to find alternative revenue options for some projects, because we can't afford to do everything that we want to do at council. And I'd probably support a motion that was a bit broader, that just asked for advice on whether councils can seek donations more broadly for projects and see how that might be done. I don't think that asking ratepayers for additional donations for climate action is something I can support at this time, though. We have an obligation to act on climate change, not just as a matter of survival, but also in the Local Government Act. Section 9 of the Local Government Act says that we have to, that the economic, social and environmental sustainability of the municipal district, including mitigation and planning for climate change risks, is something that we have to do. So asking people who are already paying their rates to pay for something extra, pay extra so we can meet this obligation in the Act, is to my mind not something that I'm very comfortable with. Acting on climate change has become core business of councils, and so I guess I'd prefer to see, if we're allowed to do optional donations, I'd prefer that to be for things that aren't core business. I did seek some feedback from young people close to me today, and overwhelmingly our discussion was along these lines, that climate change is something that that is considered something that councils need to do with the money that we have. The analogy was put to me that it's sort of like people paying $50 to go and visit the zoo and then being asked to donate another $10 if they want to actually see the animals. Ratepayers are asking us to use the money that they've already paid to us to provide core services such as mitigating and planning for climate change. And we're getting better all the time at working out how best to do that. I know that we've still got some work to do on that. Thank you very much for putting this forward for discussion, though.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. And I believe this motion is just asking for a report to come back and consider if this would be a suitable approach. So, look, I'm happy to support this and get some further information to see if this is something, A, that we actually can do as a council, and I guess B, to see if there is actually community appetite as well. It's extra ratepayer/resident contribution is done in a way in other areas of council. Now, not directly like tick a box on a rates notice, but residents and ratepayers helped fund the new East Keilor Leisure Centre, and then those same ratepayers need to pay for a membership if they want to go, and that's the same price membership as people who aren't from the municipality. So we also have sporting clubs that co-contribute to council assets. Now, these are all different, but these hopefully are things that are looked at and considered when the report comes back to see if there is a precedent or if it's something that we can do. So given it's just asking for a report, I'm happy to support the motion. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Councillor Sypek, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I understand the arguments against this notice of motion, and I accept them, and they're valid as well. But I just want to point out something. A few years back, we never had a thing called open space contributions. Now, that was a new initiative, a great initiative that came to councils, and we have builders who now pay open space contributions. And you know the great thing about that, Madam Mayor, is with that open space contributions, we have done great things in Moonee Valley. And one of them is the Rosehill Park with the new water features and the lake in there, and the habitat and the bird life and the creature life that has come there too. That's a great initiative from open space contributions. Now, can you imagine what we could do with a contribution for climate change? Imagine we would be the forerunners. We would be one of the best councils in Australia to do environmental contributions, projects that would be world class. And I tell you, the spotlight would be on us. If we could replicate open space contributions with something like this, wow, wouldn't that be a great thing, Madam Mayor? And you would be the one that initiated it too. How's that?
It's all right, Councillor Sypek, you can have all the credit. Thank you for that wonderful close. I shouldn't have said that, I do apologise. I will be neutral, independent chair, but I will put that to the vote now. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Nation, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne. All those against is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. That motion is carried. Now, councillors, we are up to item 11 on the agenda, which is urgent business. Do we have any tonight? Okay. And we have no confidential reports, so it means not quite record-breaking time, but it is 7:33 and I will call the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending in person, and thank you to everyone for joining in online. We'll see you in a fortnight.